Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode 142 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today MMA star / serial entrepreneur, Chad Money Mendes. Such a great conversation, everyone. Sit back and enjoy. We're live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today, Chad Mendes. What is up, brother?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I've been trying to get Chad on for a while, and this guy's a busy young man. So I'm glad he put a little time aside for me. It's going to be a fun conversation today. I always start off by talking what you currently do. We're going to take it back a bit and I want to talk about your route into wrestling, childhood. Where'd you grow up? Your love for the outdoors. How did this all start? So let's talk about you growing up. Where'd you grow up, and is that a huge influence in you with your parents into your love for outdoors and all the things you're doing right now and your kind of your entrepreneurial venture now, because you become almost like a serial entrepreneur now, and still in the MMA world or still in the fighting scene. So let's talk about you growing up and where'd you grow up?
Yeah, man. I first of all, I think it definitely has a lot of connection there, but I started when I was 5 years old wrestling. I actually started competitive swimming before that. I was 4.
Seriously?
Swam for about a year. Yeah. No, I don't know if anybody really knows that, but I still got a bunch of the old ribbons from, just getting when you were a little kid. But I remember those days, man, going and doing little tournaments, jumping in, swimming, and then we'd meet back at practice the next week and we'd all sit Indian style, and the coach would hand out everybody's ribbons that they had won from the event. And those are probably my first memories of any type of athletic competition. But I started wrestling at 5 and never took a single year off from 5 all the way up through college. Ended up getting recruited and wrestled at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
I was a NCAA runner-up D1 my senior year. I was a 2-time All-American there, multiple-time Pac-10 champ, and then basically graduated.
Did you ever have any aspirations to get into the Olympic team or anything, or that was nothing that really mattered?
I did. Honestly, growing up, that was kind of the goal.
Yeah.
But I met Uriah Faber, my second year in college, and we worked some wrestling camps together over the summers as basically we were the counselors, but he was training for fights. So I think it was maybe like his second or third fight ever or something like that. And he kept hurting everybody. And so he didn't have anybody to train with at the camp. He's like, man, I'm going to have to leave if I don't, get somebody that'll work out with me. And so I was like, screw it. I don't know any jiu-jitsu or anything, but I'll roll with you. And we rolled for hours, man. And I obviously got submitted a bunch because I had no clue what I was doing, but he's like, man, I think you're going to be really good at this. He's like, if you want, after you graduate, chase that NCAA dream after you graduate. He's like, if you want, move up to Sacramento and you'll have a place on our team. So, I guess that was kind of the start of.
How old were you then, roughly, when you met him? Probably like 19.
So probably 19, maybe 20, 19, maybe.
So your lineage with him goes back pretty deep, huh?
Yeah, even high school, actually. I actually knew him when I was in high school because he was coaching at UC Davis. So I would go and compete against some of his guys in freestyle tournaments, like open tournaments. So I was in high school, I got to compete against some college guys. So yeah, but it was just basically meeting him. I didn't really get to know him until sophomore year. But yeah, man. So that kind of got the bug in my head. I'm going to finish college. I'll finish my wrestling career and I'd like to go give it a shot. If I'm good at it, I'll continue doing it. If not, I have a degree in kinesiology and I'll go that route, and ended up, I graduated next day, threw all my stuff in a U-Haul, moved up to Sacramento, moved into Faber's spare bedroom and jumped right into pro practice with all the guys. And I trained for 3 months, had my first pro fight. And
so, no amateur, you went right to pro, huh?
Straight to pro. Yeah. And submitted the dude in the first round. And I was like, this is awesome, man. I think I got $3,000, which, right.
Which is not bad. But no, it's not bad. If you look back at the UFC history, I mean, there was guys making that in the UFC,
fight, yeah, he got $500.
In the UFC.
No, just his
first
fight.
Yeah. Which is very common. I mean, a lot of the pro, even the amateurs or the pro, I mean amateurs, but the pro smaller events. I mean, if you're making $1,000, $1,500, like most guys are happy, which is sad when you think of how much work, how much effort goes into it. But that's another story for another day. So
yeah, man, my dad got me into hunting in the outdoors too. If you want to touch on that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I grew up hunting and fishing with my dad and my brothers since,
how many brothers do you have? How many brothers and sisters?
Oh man, I got a lot of half brothers. I'm the only child from my mom and my dad, but I got 1, 2, 3, 4 half brothers and 2 half sisters.
Are you guys all close?
No, not too close. No, a little bit, but I'd say I'm closest with on my mom's side, my half brother over there, the oldest. But no, and my sister on my dad's side. We're definitely the closest.
So growing up, hunting, fishing, that was a big part of your childhood, right?
Yep, hunting, fishing, and I just remember following my dad through the woods a lot of the times, and just kind of seeing how he did things. And then when I turned 12, I got my hunter safety done, and I was able to hunt myself. And I ended up getting my first buck with a bow. And man, I just loved the whole process of field to fork and being able to provide and live off what I've actually gone out and harvested and put in the work and the time and the practice to go out and do myself. So that's kind of where the whole love from the outdoors kind of stemmed from, was my dad, my family. And then obviously going into college with wrestling and school, there was a ton of stuff going on. I had to actually stop doing. I didn't get to do it as much as I wanted through those college years, but after graduating, moving up and getting my fight life started, I had a little bit more time to focus on getting back out and putting meat in the freezer and stuff like that, and just kind of grew on that. So man, that's where it all kind of stemmed from.
So we'll get back into your fighting a little bit after, but let's talk about how that passion turned into business. Because you got your book out now. You do a lot of, I guess, fishing tours. I saw all that. You do hunting as well, tours, retreats. Let's talk about that. How did that all start? Do you have partners? How did that all become a business for you?
Yeah. So for me, it was, obviously you guys know in the UFC, once you're done fighting, that's it. You don't get a retirement. There's nothing like that. You got to do all that stuff on your own. So for me, I was like, look, I can't fight forever. I got to start figuring out something that makes me money outside of fighting. And I said, okay, I love the outdoors. I love hunting. I love fishing. I love teaching people about and how to do it. How can I turn this into some type of business to where I get to go out, live my passion, and make money and put food on my family's table? And so me and a good buddy of mine, my business partner, Mike Papa, and it's funny kind of how we met. He was our local UPS driver for our gym. So when I moved up to Sacramento, he was, our gym was on his route. So he would stop in, obviously drop off whatever packages, but we'd sit down on his lunch break. And it was usually right after my first training. So we could sit there and have lunch. And when I first moved up there, nobody on our team really hunted. So I was kind of the only one that did it. And I didn't know anything in the area, where to go. So me and Mike really bonded. His family owns a bunch of property around here, and he was really big into hunting and fishing. So every day we'd sit and just talk, and we just became great buddies. Anyways, he retired from UPS, and we had the idea of Fins and Feathers, coming up with taking people out, teaching them how to hunt. Basically, you're teaching guys how to stalk, how to, field dress, how to, obviously properly shoot the animal, and the whole breakdown process of getting the meat from the field to your table, and teaching these people how to do that, along with fishing, taking guys out on different fishing trips. But there's tons of guides all over the world that already do that type of stuff. So okay, well, what are we going to do here that's different? So I also know a ton of UFC fighters outside of our gym that love hunting, fishing, and the outdoors, and different football, basketball, baseball players. I have actors, buddies that love it. And so it's okay, we have all these connections. How can we mesh these two things together and create a business that nobody else has done, and make it something that's now on the entertainment side of things and the field to fork, to where able to go out and learn a skill set and put food in their freezer and just make it this super unique experience that nobody else is doing. So what we created was Fins and Feathers, what we called a celebrity outdoor service. So we put together different hunting and fishing trips all over the world. And then I get different buddies of mine that love hunting, love fishing, that are either UFC fighters, Bellator fighters, pro ball players, actors, pro snowboarders, PBR riders, whatever it may be. Yeah. And we put those guys on and girls on the trips with clients, and they go now share a hunting camp or on a fishing boat with that person that they normally watch playing a sport on TV, or have only gone and maybe shook their hand and taken a photo with at a meet and greet. And now they get to spend multiple days with them and really get to pick their brain on their sport and get to know them on a personal level in a situation that they'd never get to do elsewhere, That's
pretty cool.
Yeah. And so we created that, we launched that back in 2015, and kind of just started slowly growing it over the years. And it's now something that we can technically do full time, but I have my hands in so many different other things. Now we have basically our team that basically handles a lot of that stuff now. And I get to just go on a lot of these trips with clients and just have a good time.
Now with that, are you getting into or thought of getting into the equipment side of it, to providing equipment and having your own line of equipment to provide for these events?
No, I mean, what's great about building my brand in the UFC world and helping grow my social media platforms through that company was having the following that I have, to where now companies will provide us with a lot of that equipment, and which is great because it's all stuff that I would normally buy anyways. But it's great because now I can go to these companies and say, look, this is stuff that we would buy for this trip. Would you guys be open to
sponsoring events and stuff?
Sponsoring us. We'll trade you marketing and media stuff, for that. And a lot of these companies are just jumping on. So that takes care of a huge cost for us of having to buy all this stuff. Which is nice. And then it works for both sides because we get the stuff, they get the marketing, and everybody's happy. And then everybody on our trips gets to use quality equipment and have a good time.
How did the book come along? Is it on pre-sale still?
It is pre-sale. So this is a cookbook that me and my really good buddy, another good buddy of mine, Chad Belding, created. Belding owns and is the host of the Outdoor Life TV the Foul Life TV on the Outdoor Channel.
Yeah.
And he and I both have a very large passion for cooking. Obviously, in hunting and fishing and the outdoor world, that's a given. Yeah. But we both have a huge passion for cooking, and I think mine stems a lot from cutting weight over the years. Like I started cutting weight for the first time in my life, my sophomore year in high school, and so cutting weight through wrestling and even into my UFC career. Food was always something that I was very drawn to. I think it's because I was always limiting it. And it's like the night before weigh-ins and I'm watching the Food Network and I'm just like, it's like, oh, I'm going to eat that with soon. I'm making that for sure when I can eat again, And so I think that passion kind of comes from that. Also my dad too. My dad was always the one in the kitchen cooking and creating and getting inventive, I guess you can say, in the kitchen with different types of foods and wild game and all kinds of stuff that I would see. And obviously some of it I would like, some of them I wouldn't. And the same thing happens in my kitchen. Like I sometimes create something that turns out really bad. Sometimes I make something that turns out really good. And that's the stuff you keep notes on. And so we decided like, look, dude, me and him, from all the years of hunting and being in different hunting camps with different cooks and different people that share the same passions as us as hunting and fishing, and you get to pick their brains on different ways of cooking things. Let's put together a cookbook with a bunch of different wild game recipes. We also have a lot of domestic meats, beef, pork, chicken stuff in there too. Yeah. Desserts, even cocktails. But let's put this together and call it The Provider. And let's build this brand, The Provider Life, basically. Like it's a life of being a provider, of understanding where your food comes from. Because this day and age, I feel like this next generation is completely starting to forget about.
I love that. 100%.
Food, It's like so many people just assume like, I walk into a store, there's no face on that meat. It's just a nice, clean piece of meat wrapped in plastic. I grab it and I don't feel guilty, But as soon as they see me post a picture of a dead animal and they see the face of where what that meat comes from, then it triggers something. And it's like, I hate you for doing that. But I just went and bought a piece of beef or a piece of chicken from the store, but I don't feel guilty because there's no face connected to it, you know?
Yeah,
and it's like,
yeah.
there's a lot of people that have completely lost that connection to their food, and we want to keep that going. You know, that's something that I feel very strongly about. The reason why I hunt and I fish, obviously it's a good time for me to get out there, be in the outdoors and practice my skill sets of being able to hunt and harvest an animal. But having the ability to go out into my freezer at any time through my training camp and go, I think tonight I'm going to make some elk steaks. And I pull out some elk steaks. My family, I feed my daughter some elk steaks. My wife eats some elk steaks, you know, and there's no better feeling in the world knowing that I was out there for 5 days and I remember the stock in on that bull, and I, you know, made a perfect shot with my bow and he was down in seconds. And now we're living off of this meat. That's a connection, a strong connection. And it makes that meat and that meal taste better to me and to my family, knowing that I went out there and did that myself. And that's what the provider life and the provider mentality is all about. And that's what we're trying to get going in this next generation of people up and coming that are forgetting about what hunting is and why we do it and why we've done it for so long as a human race, you know? And I think that's something that we want to keep going. And that's the whole mindset of us kind of creating this cookbook. And we also have a line of rubs that are pretty much geared towards wild game, but obviously can be used on anything. But we're trying to build this brand that keeps everyone still connected to their food. And that's, you know, that's what we're wanting on all this. So
I love what you're doing, brother. And I just want to give you some props here because you understand what you said about the UFC. The fight game is a short game. You understand that you have to utilize your platforms. A lot of fighters are not doing that. Mm-hmm. Utilize your platform to build a brand, which is you, not the UFC, you, the brand. But I love that you've really taken that and honed that into a passion. So a lot of guys will still get out of the UFC and now they become coaches, or they're still stuck to that industry.
Yep.
And they become part of that industry, and that industry is always engraved in them. I love the bare fact that you've taken something that you truly have a passion for, because I mean, if you don't have a passion and purpose for a business, that dies, that juice, that drive at the first 3-4 months goes away. And you want to have that passion. You wake up every single Monday and you're ready to go. You want to go. So the bare fact that you're doing that in an industry that you love, you have passion for, that, like, you're talking right through the damn heart. Like, everything you're saying is passion. So, I mean, congrats on that, man. And I can see the community building. And I love that, because the way you're talking is all about building a community. And the bigger that community builds, that brand builds, and the product line builds, and everything builds. And before you know it, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, you guys could have 50, 60 products and be this global brand, right? So I love that, man. I love everything you're doing. So congrats on all that. And I see it. And when I watch your social media, like, I could see everything that you're doing, because I've been in business for 26 years. I can see everything you're doing. And I don't know if other people realize, but there's a path and a process to everything you're doing. So congrats on all that, man. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you. You're right, man. There's a path, and it's taken me a few years to kind of really fine tune things, but I think my mindset with all this was creating multiple different brands that all work together.
Holistically.
Fins and Feathers, where we're doing hunting and fishing tours and guides, and making this an entertaining but filled the fork experience. Rolling over into the provider brand, where now we have a cookbook. So if you go out on one of these other hunts and you do harvest a deer with us, now you can use this cookbook, and we have tons of different venison recipes in that. So now, and then we have the line of rubs that also goes into a lot of those recipes as suggestions. They go really well with some of these things. We also have, I don't know if you saw the Peak Refuel, our freeze dried meals, which are great backpacking in the backcountry. You got an elk, you got a bison, you got a deer recipe, the three of those. They weigh nothing at all. It's, you can fold it up, put it in your backpack, and you can't fill it. It's like, so you can pack 5, 6, 10 days worth of food in your pack and maybe add a pound of weight or a couple pounds of weight, compared to just, Tupperwares and Ziplocs and all that stuff. That adds weight, which equals more work, which equals burning more calories, which typically equals you're not going to be able to go as long. So that all works. And it's a great way for people who have never tried elk or bison or venison and I get hit up a lot like, hey man, I've never hunted before. I see all this meat you have. It's awesome. Can I buy some of it from you? Which is not legal. You can't legally sell wild game.
Yeah.
And so this is a way for us to, obviously these are all like farm raised game meats. It's not like going out and actually arrowing a deer or something like that, but it's as close as you legally possibly can get. And so it's a great way for people to go out and try these meats for the first time in a way that I know these are recipes that I've created. So I know they're going to taste good for them, and for them to try them for the first time. Nothing worse than, going somewhere and having venison for the first time cooked by somebody that doesn't know how to cook it, and they cook it into a hockey puck and it's like chewing on a piece of leather because it's lean meat. It's not like cooking a steak, which even a steak, in my opinion, you can overcook and it's still tough and chewy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm more of a medium rare type guy. So
I'm medium raw. Like that.
Oh, there you go. See, so it's like venison or elk, whatever it may be, any type of wild game. It's all very lean meat. It's not, sitting there eating a bunch of corn and stuff and trapped in a little pen. So it can overcook quick. So this is a great way for people to try these types of game meats for the first time in their life and know that it's going to taste good. So I'm just trying to create all these brands where it's all encompassing. They're all basically used off of each other and basically all in a space that I'm so passionate about and that I love to be a part of. And it just, like you said, I wake up every day and I don't feel like I'm going to work. I have a ton of stuff I got to get done, but I love doing it, man. It's today. I'm going to go with caffeine and let's get to it, And so
I love it.
That's
I love
fun for me. So it's been great. And it's, I feel honored to be able to wake up every day, have a beautiful family and do something that I'm passionate about. And
we're going to talk about your family a bit, but let's talk about something here. So you're doing amazing career-wise, business-wise now. Why get back into fight mode and put your body through another training camp? Like you've branded yourself, you got your social platform, you're gaining the following, you're just on Joe Rogan, like you're building this incredible platform for yourself. Why put your body through all that stress and all that? It's just something that's engraved in you. Is it hard to let go of it? Is it that athlete mentality is like, I can't let go yet? I got to see that a little bit more.
Here's my mindset on it. So when I retired from the UFC, which was 2.5 years ago now, one of the main reasons why I retired was because my pay was not worth it. I could make that money and more doing all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, look, we're getting to this point where I'm about to have my first baby. I have these other businesses that are starting to do really well. Like, is this something that I need to do anymore? I still have the desire to compete, but am I just being selfish, beating my body up because it's not worth the money?
No. And the long-term damage too, right? The long haul, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I basically sat down with the wife, with the team, and we talked things over, and it just wasn't worth it at that time in my life. I was still 34 years old. I'm still in my prime. I just turned 36 in May. So, it's not like I'm over the hill and I can't compete. I mean, my last UFC fight was with the current champ who's destroyed everyone. I think I'm the only person that's ever dropped him. And basically, I think I was still winning most of the rounds, And so it's one of those things. It's not like I left because I don't think I can compete with the guys anymore. It's just pay-wise wasn't worth it. And I'm the idiot at the time. 5 years ago, I signed a contract. It was an 8-fight contract with the UFC. And at the time, it was a decent contract. It wasn't great, but it was decent. Yeah. Well, fast forward to now, that contract is shit. And it's not worth me getting back in the UFC and risking my body and my health for what I was getting paid.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to here. And my thought was, look, I'm going to step away from this. If the UFC ever decides to come back with me at different numbers, I'd be willing to talk because I'm not over competing. I'm not done. Yeah. Like I said, it just didn't make sense. Well, crickets there. So never heard anything from the UFC.
Yeah.
And this huge opportunity popped up. I mean, this is a contract that is bigger than any UFC contract they ever got.
Is it more than one fight? Is it how many fight deal?
3-fight contract.
3-fight. Okay.
And it's a big payday, bigger than any.
Who's your opponent in your first fight, man?
You don't have one yet. They're still.
You don't have one. Okay.
Yeah. So this got thrown at me about a year ago, a little less than a year ago now. Yeah. And so we've been kind of going back and forth, and I was toying with it. Like, look, this is a great payday. but let's think this through. Is this something that I need, or is it something I want? Bottom line, it came down to it's something I want.
Okay, let's go. Yeah.
Need it. But look, I just turned 36. This is a huge opportunity. If the pay was better, I'd probably still be fighting in the UFC, but it's not. So let's X that out. And I might as well take charge of this opportunity while I still can, before I get too old to where I look back and I'm trying to fight when I'm 44, 45 years old. And it's like, come on, dude, you're too old now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you're not like, one thing I'm very passionate about, sorry for cutting you off, Jeff. One thing I'm very passionate about is living with no regrets. I do that every single day. I've been doing that for years and years, whether it's spending time with family, it's living with no regrets. So I love that it's something essentially you're living with no regrets. You're putting this out there so you won't look back 5-10 years and wish you did it. So I admire that part of it. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for sure. And it is. And that was one of the things I had to battle with back and forth mentally was, look, what's the end goal here? Why are we doing this? What is the purpose? Is it because the money's good? I mean, obviously that's a big part of it. The money's good. Now I feel like I can justify getting up daily and just grinding and pushing myself, through those moments where you're so sore from head to toe that you don't want to be touched by anybody. Do I want to go out and run 5 miles right now? No, I don't, but I need to. Do I want to get in there and boxing spar? I don't really feel like it, but now those times can be justified. All right, look, this is a great end goal here. Pays good. You get to compete in a sport that I've always wanted to compete in. Boxing is something I've always wanted to try.
Yeah.
Just never really had the opportunity going from wrestling straight into MMA. So this is one of those things where it's new and it's exciting.
It's very raw.
Yeah.
In the way where it has almost like a natural connection to even your hunting, everything, because the bear, it's very raw to earth, right? It's just very yes.
It is.
Totally. Huh? So it kind of matches with what you're doing. So when I was reading you're going to do that, in my head, like I connected the two, and I thought in my head, this is a great way to keep building that brand.
Yep.
So you could really use the social media, use your platform to even grow your platform to a new level, which in turn will help the other stuff grow as well. So
100%. And that's another part of it. And that was one of the things, one of the check marks on the positive was growing the brand still, it's like going on Rogan to announce it, that's huge, being able to, have content of me training, which is what people want to see, and showing the hunting and taking that food from the field and living off of it and showing those recipes and all that stuff connected with training and recovery. Like that all is huge.
All together. Yeah. It's massive.
Oh, yeah. And so that's what I want to share. I mean, that's my life. I'm not like making this stuff up because I think it'll look good on social media. Like this is what I choose to do. And this is how I want my life to be lived. And I want to be able to provide for my family in this manner. So it's like, I'm just basically opening up and showing a lot of stuff to my following and to people that aren't following me yet, hopefully, that want to come jump on and be a part of it and just kind of keep growing that family, and just.
I think there's also the authenticity part of it, right? Because you could get a celebrity, you could get a high profile athlete and their posts or their cars or their girls, they're like your posts or you hunting an animal or taking people on a fishing trip. They're authentic. And I think that authenticity is going to drive even more and more people to you, because those are the followers you want over the long haul. Those are the followers that'll turn in your community. Those are the followers that'll become essentially your customers. So you're doing it right because you're just being you. And I think that people appreciate that and see that, right?
I agree, man. And I hope that's the case. And I hope people realize like that's me just being me and not always trying to do it for the gram type stuff.
Yeah.
Like you see a lot of influencers and people online that it's basically walking that fine line with it. And I don't ever want to be that type of person, Just, like I said, just me trying to open up and share my life with everybody that is interested in seeing it. So yeah. I love it. Give me just to dive into the UFC. Is there one story or two little stories of a moment or something that just happened that when you think back of your memories in UFC, just puts a smile on your face? It could be after a fight, during a fight, anything, a moment that just puts a smile on your face. Such a good memory. So give me a couple quick stories. And I want to talk about your family after, but let's give me a couple quick stories. Well, it actually correlates with my family. So
Okay,
my
perfect.
wife and my father-in-law, my mother-in-law came out to my fight in Virginia against Ricardo Lamas.
Okay.
And they had front row tickets seats right there. So when I actually walked in the cage and I looked over, they were all just sitting right there and I could talk to them. We were so close, And so I go in there and, knock Ricardo out in the first round.
Yeah.
It's great. You put all this hard work in and, no injuries, you get in there and just finish it real quick. And I just remember walking out of the cage after, and my father-in-law was actually the first one that met me. He comes running up and he's just so pumped. But we talk and hug or whatever. And then I look over and my wife's just sitting there, just all like red and giddy, like she's about to start crying, and just walked up and gave her a hug. And it was just cool to have everybody right there and it be such a successful fight after putting all that time and energy and effort into it, and just having them first and foremost as I walk out of the cage. So that's probably one of my best memories of any post-fight stuff for sure.
Your dad, you've talked about your dad a few times. Your dad's still with us?
Yep.
Yeah. Is he still like, he was obviously a huge influence. Are you still very close to your dad? Or are you still around him quite a bit?
Unfortunately, we aren't as close as we used to be. Just some family drama stuff. But growing up, I was always very close with my dad. He was my wrestling coach from 5 years all the way up to, through high school. Even he would help with stuff. And then, it was all my wrestling stuff through college and, all of my fights and everything too. So my dad was definitely somebody that was very influential in my life as far as an athlete. But, there's obviously some stuff that we just don't see eye to eye on when it comes to raising a family and stuff like that, and family issues. And so, yeah, over the years, things have kind of separated a little bit, but yeah, my dad is still with us for sure.
I'm going to say something to you. You take this the way you want and appear, obviously, don't take anything offensively. I just lost my dad. I just lost my pops 13 weeks ago.
I saw that.
And he was my best friend. Like I'm 44. I was a 44-year-old that would talk to my dad 3 times a day. I would call my dad to say goodnight every night. And I had this relationship with him and I live with no regrets, and he's gone and I still have regrets. Mm-hmm. I mean, my mindset with relationships, Chad, is you don't have to forgive somebody. You don't have to accept it. You just have to, even for your own self peace, just make peace with it. And I mean, even though you might not have the best relationship with dad, I would still connect and keep it as strong as possible, and let him be whatever time you can around with your daughter and stuff. Just the bare fact that you don't want that in your mind, or one day when he is gone, you have those regrets. I could have did this, or I could have said this. So if you take anything from this, like try to think it through and maybe just sit down and have an open conversation with him. You might not have, just to have that relationship where, even if it's a peace, where you guys have that peace and understanding between each other, so you don't have regrets one day when he is here. Because I mean, I'm listening to you and how you're talking about your dad, about hunting, fishing, like you have a smile on your face. So obviously those memories are strong and powerful, right? So just, man, if you could save it, man. It's not worth it, man. Life changes. Yeah, I know. Life changes in a flash of an eye, right? So yeah, that's what I wanted to say to you. But your wife, where'd you meet your wife?
So I met her actually in Utah. She's originally from Missouri, played volleyball at West Virginia University, and then moved out to Utah with a girlfriend and worked at a VA mortgage company. It was supposed to be just a summer job, and she ended up loving Utah so much she stayed out there for like 3 years. But the guy that owned that mortgage company also owned a local fight organization there in Utah. So some of our up and coming guys would always go out there and fight. Yeah. And, a bunch of us would go out and help them cut weight that last few days and corner them and stuff like that. And she was one of the gals in a cubicle at the mortgage company. And we'd always go in there, and Will was the guy that owned it, his name. And he would always just like pull pranks on all the people that worked with them. Yeah. We'd always go in there and help and just kind of just screw around with everybody. And she ended up being one of the QBs. So we ended up meeting that way, and actually, met each other and knew each other, but had like zero connection, like physically. Like it's basically, there was like, hey, how's it going? Like we would talk, but for, I would say probably 3 years. And then I don't know, we just one day sat down and finally had like a solid conversation. And that's kind of how it all just started working out there. Like, I don't know if we just never really had that connection because we never had the time to like sit and talk. It was always just kind of like either through passing or messing around in the office or whatever. But it's crazy how life works in that sense, man. It's like you can know somebody for that long and not know that they're your soulmate until you actually sit down and have a certain kind of conversation or something major happens.
It's one of those things, right? When it's meant to be, it's meant to be, right? Mm-hmm. How long have you guys been married now for?
Since 2017. But I mean, we did before that probably. I think we've been together 8 years total now.
How old's your daughter now?
Two. She's a handful.
It's terrible too. Is my 30? You're 36, so 34. Yeah. I'm 44. My daughter's 15, and my son's 13, buddy. Like I'm taking my kids driving lessons now already, man. It's crazy, man. Crazy how fast time flies. Right? Oh, it's crazy. What does fatherhood mean to you?
Man, for me, it's we go back to the whole provider mentality, and it's like I want to be the best dad for her and the best husband that I can be, in the sense that I'm doing anything and everything that I can to be as successful for our family as possible, but also spending those and cherishing those moments that we can together at any time, you know. And so there's definitely a very difficult balance. You know, you got to find that balance, I think, with spending too much time working and, you know, time with the family. You got to have both in there, because it's like, what does it matter if you're working all the time, but you're not seeing your family? You know, you're working hard for your family, but you're never there for them, you know?
I wrote a whole book on that, buddy.
Yeah.
I call it the non-negotiables, right? There's certain things in life you just put non-negotiable and you lock them in, and just, it is what it is. They have to be there. Spending time with your kids, spending time with your family. It is what it is. It's there. And all the other things, if they're important to you, you'll sacrifice, whether you wake up earlier, go to bed later, cut out shit from your life, cut out people from your life that shouldn't be there. Like, you'll figure what is important and sacrifice what has to be done to make the time and effort to be there. Right. Yeah. It's a huge part.
Yeah. And it's tough, man. 'Cause it's like, especially now throwing trading in the mix, it's like, we got Fins and Feathers, we got the Provider, both cookbook and the rubs. We got American Almond Beef, which is another company of mine. We got the Peak Mills, and now I'm part owner of Breakline Optics. So we got
what's that one? Breakline? What is that?
Breakline Optics. It's a sunglass company. Me and Clay Guida actually just bought into this company.
Clay Guida.
Yeah,
that's a name. That's seriously okay. Interesting.
Yeah, he's
the carpenter. Of course, I know who it is.
But so we got all these things that I'm constantly working on.
So you're constantly looking for opportunities, huh?
Yeah, always. At this point, I'm like, there's got to be a time where I start saying no to things, you know?
Yeah,
because for me, it's when I retired from the fight game, which was all I did before. Yeah. And that's where I put all my focus and energy and time into, like, that work mentality was the fight game. Well, I retired, and then I'm just like, I almost went into like a depression a little bit. Like, God, I have zero worth, like self-worth. Like, what am I doing?
Let's talk about that. So, I mean, you hear that with a lot of athletes, and it's something like, I've had Super Bowl champs. I've had a lot of guys on his podcast, like I had Brett Boone the other day, Major League Baseball player. Identity is something that sticks with a lot of athletes. How did you separate that? When obviously you're saying you went through that identity shift. How did you break out of that? I mean, that's something I think a lot of people need to hear. And that could be even for college sports, could be anything, right?
100%, man. It's like you go from 4 years old of competition all the way up through, you know, 34 and when I retired. And so it's like, you've been an athlete, you've been that person your whole life, the finding an end goal, aka your opponent, setting up game plans, training, going through all the ups and downs through all your camp, getting in there, doing all the media and everything leading up to it. You know, you have all eyes on you. You're getting in the octagon and you fight. Then you take a little bit of time off, you're happy, you're relaxed, you win, or you're, dealing with a loss and you're trying to figure all that out, but then you jump right back into the next one. And it's just like this constant lifestyle of just on. And, you have those ups and downs of you're the man or you lost, or you're the man or you lost, or, whatever it may be. But that's been my whole life. And then you start toying with the fact, okay, well, I'm getting to that point where I'm thinking about maybe hanging it up as a competitor. And so it actually it was a lot to deal with for the last probably 3 or 4 months before making that decision. And then once I did make the decision, knowing it through that whole training camp, that once I was done, like, what the hell was I going to do? And I had fins and feathers, but there's so much that at the time that was like our biggest moneymaker outside of, influencer stuff and stuff like that. But, my money was coming from the fight game and like what we talked about, once you stop, no more money's coming in. So that's a huge pressure. It's like, what am I going to do for my family if this company fails? Like I could, at least if I'm fighting and I lose a fight, it's like, okay, well, I only got half to pay that one, but I'm going to go fighting again another 3 months or 4 months. So I'll be good there. We'll make more money there. So, you always have that like backup feeling. Well, when you're done, there was just a ton of pressure on my shoulders to be the provider for my family, to be successful. I don't want to let anybody down type of thing. So then when you stop and it's like, okay, well, I don't have to go to the gym anymore. I don't really have anything to train for. I don't have an opponent. Okay, well, what do we do now? Okay, we'll go do the hunting and fishing stuff. Okay, which was great. It was doing well, but there was still that like pressure of what if it doesn't take off, and what if I fail here? That's embarrassing, And so there's just so many ups and downs. And it's like, you go from being the man and in the spotlight to, that wearing off pretty quick. And now it's like, whoa, what do I do with my life? Yeah. And that's where that kind of like low spot comes from. And that lasted for me, honestly, I would say probably a good month, where it was just like, maybe even 2. And, having these long talks with my wife and her doing a great job of explaining and just putting things back into perspective. But yeah, it's a weird time for sure, especially being able to do that your whole life to shutting it off. And just now I have the rest of my life, because at the time I wasn't sure if I was ever going to come back and fight again, and it definitely took some mental toughness and really stepping outside of my body and outside of my head and looking at the big picture and, realizing I still can be successful. And I think when I stopped fighting, all that mindset of go, work, grind, hustle, I needed to put it somewhere. And I think that's why I started dumping it in the office and just, starting these other brands and teaming up with people and creating a business here and getting creative and doing something over here and just kind of spreading everything out like this. And then having this huge fight opportunity come back, and it's like, oh shit, now we're jumping back to the fight game. So now I have all this stuff spread out everywhere. You know what I mean? And
but this is the point when, as an entrepreneur, you learn how, I always say this, learn how to fire yourself from positions.
Yep.
And putting yourself around the right individuals that are going to help continue the brand and build the brands. I think that's the biggest key to being a successful entrepreneur, is putting the people in the right positions to allow your crazy imagination to keep growing and developing. Right. So I think that's where you are right now. And I think that you'll figure it out. I always say, Chad, is you take the top tier athletes and the top tier entrepreneurs, and if you were to just pretty much cut out their brain open, there's so much similarities, that hustle, that grind, that drive, that perfection. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why you've kind of pushed right into entrepreneur. And the reality is, a business could fail, but that's that whole drive of that lesson. You grow and develop. One thing you said there, I wanted to ask you something. Going through a loss as an athlete in a battle, which is you're going into cage, you and another man in there, you lose that battle. You've spent 3 months on a training camp or whatever it is. How's that? That's something I've never really talked with, and I've known UFC. I'll talk about something after. I don't know if you know that, but one of my main company. Do you know what it is? I own a company called Komoro where we design and manufacture boxing martial art equipment for 16 years almost. For 16 years, we deal with about 1,800 gyms right across North America. So we'll talk about that after. That's my main business. So I've sponsored athletes, and we've done all this for years. But give me that 24, 48 hours after a loss, your mindset, that adrenaline dump of just everything you had, all that thing. Talk me through that moment.
Man, for me, my biggest battle mentally after a loss was the feeling of letting people down. I don't want to ever let my coaches down, my family down, my fans down.
It's that crazy. Everything goes back to the provider thing.
I know, man. I hate it. And sometimes I hated it. Like, why do I have this mindset? I don't need to care so much about what everybody thinks of me, but I just feel bad. Like I just let everybody down, and it's like, that was always my biggest battle after a loss.
Yeah.
And it would take a while, but I would usually figure out like, okay, look, just let's figure out what we did wrong. Where were the mistakes? Let's fix those and get back in the gym and start training. And once I would start doing that, it would dwindle a bit. But oh man, all the losses still sting. I think about them, every single one. It still hurts. I hate losing. I hate losing at everything.
Seriously, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and so it's something that definitely drives me. I mean, which
loss and which win was most satisfying in the UFC? What loss was it the close Aldo fight?
No, I think my least favorite and one that there's two of them. Obviously the Conor fight, because I took that on 10 days notice,
which is nothing.
The guy that I know that I could beat stylistically would have been an easy fight if I was in shape. But the Frankie Edgar fight, man, that one just crushes me every time, because it's like, there was multiple things leading up to that fight that should have kept me out of the fight. And it's one of those things, and it's kind of a shitty setup with the way the UFC runs things, but it's like, if you don't fight, you don't get paid. And it was, the week before the fight, I was lightly spawned a favorite and got caught. He accidentally threw a punch that was a little bit too hard and really rung my bell. Probably gave me a bit of a concussion, but I was just like, oh, shake it off. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Also, I'd never used a dietitian leading up to that fight. And I used one all the week of weight cutting, and he had me doing a bunch of different things that I had never done before. The Epsom salt baths, natural diuretics. And I really, truly believe that it really dehydrated my head more than I usually do.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Frankie fight, he barely clipped me like right on the edge of my nose, and I was out. And it's like, I've been hit 100 times harder than that and been fine. And so it's like one of those things, like, obviously it just wasn't meant to be for me. It was meant to be for him. But looking back on it, it's like, God, I know I can beat that guy. And it's like, you go through that entire training camp, and something stupid like that happens that close to it. And you're just like, I'll be fine. Because it's like, if you don't fight, you don't get paid. You just went through all that effort and energy and time and money, like paying your trainers and your coaches and managers and all that. It's like, well, I got to get in there. And then something like that happens, and you look back on it and you're like, why did I do that? But it's just one of those things.
Do you see, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, do you see the UFC ever going in the direction to have like pensions for athletes and paying them even if there's a training camp? There's like having some type of, I don't even know how to even word it, but right now, like you said, you don't fight, you don't get paid. Mm-hmm. Do you see the UFC ever going in the direction, which I'm sure that's what you hope for the future athletes, in the direction that doesn't happen, that you retire and like any other sport, you get an NFL guy that's played 3 years in NFL and he can sit on his ass the rest of his life if he wants. Yeah. I know baseball. My wife used to work before we got married for an insurance company, a big one in Toronto, Canada, and they would have all the retirement plans for all the Toronto Blue Jay players. And you get guys that played like 2 years for the Blue Jays and they were making like $6,000, $7,000 a month. So every team, they would make a certain allowance. So if one guy played for 4 or 5 teams, had a 15-year career, he's bringing in 25, 30 G's a month for doing nothing.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I'm hoping that the UFC gets to that point. Right now they're not, and I don't know if it's anywhere close to that, and I'm definitely not, obviously didn't see it in my lifetime of fighting, but I mean, it definitely, something needs to happen. We even talked about on Rogan's podcast, because it's something I thought about years ago, is creating some type of fighter insurance that, you know, these fighters pay into monthly.
Yeah.
And if something like that does happen, because that happened to me, you know, I think it was in the UFC actually. Maybe that was still the WEC. I can't remember, but you know, I'd have a fighter.
You fought in the, I don't remember you fighting in the WEC.
Yeah, I started in the WEC. Yep.
How many fights did you fight there? I mean, obviously I remember Uriah from there. How many fights did you have in there? Remember Jose Aldo, Donald Cerrone?
Yeah, I can't remember. I'd have to look, but like I fought Cub Swanson in the WEC.
Okay,
I fought, Javier Vasquez. I fought. Oh shoot, I want to say Eric Koch was in the WEC. Yeah, Eric. Koch. Yeah. But you know, I fought some guys that all transferred over to the UFC. Yeah, man, it was that's where I started, straight out of the little show, out of the casinos, and then straight into that. So
has that ever, well, you just said it to me right now. I mean, I think that's genius. I mean, even as a business, that could be genius. Mm-hmm. Starting something like that where they all feed into it, and then eventually, I mean, that could be a very lucrative business, but at the same time help a lot of people. That's something you would ever venture into, looking into?
Oh man, I don't know, man. I've talked about this now. I talked about Rogan's and on this one, and I mean, if somebody wants to jump on that and take it, go for it. But I think it could be good. It's just, I don't know if I even have the capacity mentally or physically at this point to put that in my wheelhouse with everything else going on. As much as I'd love to say yes, but oh man, it's I think it would be something that would be very beneficial. And like you said, it could
they need, I mean, some of these athletes need as much. I mean, I don't know if you remember if you remember a guy named TJ Grant fought in the UFC.
Yeah. TJ
Grant is a local, not a local, but he's a Canadian boy. And I knew him before he got in the UFC, and we sponsored him right through the UFC. And he fought, he was at 155 and he dropped down to, no, he's at 170, then dropped to 155, and he went on a run, 4-0 or 5-0, was up for a title. And in normal training camp, I think got kneed, had a severe concussion, never fought again. Damn. Career was done right before his payday. And you look at something like that, and it's like he left with, like, he was up. I think he went to the oil rigs to work to make money. Now he has a little gym. Like, he just an incredibly humble, good, solid dude. And it's like, you see that, and it's like, he's just getting by life right now. He's married. He's obviously happy. He's married. He's got kids. But it's like you're obviously still at that peak where you could take your brand and bring it to another level. And your social media, everything you're doing is, I mean, I wish every UFC fighter young coming in right now sees what you're doing, studies what you're doing, because I think it's so impressive. But it's sad to see when you're seeing athletes that go in there and they've given everything they can for 5 years, 6 years, and they finally, in an injury, ends it right there, and they have nothing. They have literally nothing. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Crazy.
Man. We got guys that I've been training with on Team Alpha Male that, you know, have been training there longer than I've been there, you know, and they go through the grind of all these practices to get the crap beat out of them, you know, fight through injuries, and, you know, and they're still fighting and like trying to find little casinos here and there, making $1,000 to $2,000 a fight.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like, dude, what are you doing? They work a full-time job and they're doing this. And it's like, yeah, man, it's a tough way to make a living for sure.
Yeah. And that's why I look at Uriah as an entrepreneur and watch what he's done with his rentals and everything he did years. Smart dude, smart dude. So you see that, and it shows that there's hope for a lot of these athletes. You just have to be, I mean, some of them just have to be educated, have to be taught and shown what to do. 100%. Right.
Yep. And Faber is actually one of those mentors for me with the business lifestyle. I mean, I never had any business background. Like, I was a kinesiology major. I wish I would have taken business in college, but I had no idea of any of this stuff. But then coming up to Sacramento and seeing Faber do all this stuff with the rentals, like you said, and starting businesses and, you know, staying on top of doing all the media and putting in the work that it takes outside of the gym to grow that brand and, you know, keep things relevant and help things be successful, was kind of where I started learning and picking his brain on all this stuff and kind of just seeing what he's doing and copying a lot of it. And that definitely motivated me. Sometimes I even still now hit him up and like ask for advice on certain things, you know, and he helps a ton. So Yeah, I mean, bottom line, you're right. I think it comes down to a lot of these people just needing somebody to kind of take them under their wing and show them. I mean, this day and age, it's definitely not an excuse if you don't do that, because it's like you can go on YouTube now and, pretty much learn anything.
I tell Chad, I took almost 60 entrepreneurs over a fraction of 3-4 years, and I helped them, and I brought some of them funk robbers and stuff that, like, I helped them from ground one going up to 7 figures. I never charged a penny. You would realize that most successful people have zero issues helping other entrepreneurs that are willing to ask the question. I think a lot of people are scared to ask the questions. They're scared to ask the questions, or they have that ego driven where they feel like they do it on their own. And then that's the stupidest thing you could do, because you could find, I guarantee you, if you find a young entrepreneur, a young MMA fighter, UFC guy, if he were to call you and ask for advice, would you say no to help him?
Yeah, I'd help him any way I possibly could. Yeah.
Most guys are like that. And I think a lot of people are scared to ask a question or get their other comfort zone to reach out to people. And I think that's the biggest mistake. I'm gonna ask you 2 off the chart questions. 1, superpower. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Flying.
Superman. I got it's over there. Look, I got Superman back there.
Oh yeah. There's so many times in the field where I'm like, God, I just need to close the distance on this pull up, and like another 30-40 yards and I'll be good. It's like there's no way to possibly get there without making a shit ton of noise. So it's like hover over the ground. Oh man.
If something were to happen to you today in a few words, how would you want to be described or remembered by your loved ones?
Somebody that hustled hard for the positive of providing for their family.
That word. You got that tattooed on yourself, provider?
Right across my chest, the provider.
What was your first tattoo you got? What age?
I got a star on my back, which is so funny because my best man at my wedding, before I even met him, it was his very first tattoo too, and he has the exact same star on his back.
You didn't do it together, did you?
No, I didn't even know him at that point.
Okay,
it's just weird, but yeah, we got matching tattoos. It's kind of weird.
This has been awesome, brother. Anything you want to leave with our audience? And I'm going to put on all the show notes, how to get a hold of Chad, how to buy his book or pre-sale his book, check out his events, all that stuff like that. I'll put out on all our show notes. So give anything you want to tell our audience.
Yeah, I forgot to actually mention our pre-sale giveaway for the provider. It's on Amazon. If you look up the provider cookbook, basically anything, any pre-order starting from basically a few days ago. So just jump on now.
Yeah.
Through October 1 enters you in, and we're going to give away 2 floor seat tickets to my upcoming fight in October. So
where is your fight going to be? Is it Vegas?
Chandler, Arizona.
Sure. You said that before we started. I apologize.
Not far from Scottsdale. And then we're going to have a big after party after, and that winner, we're going to give them 2 tickets so they can bring someone with them, but both of those people can come and hang out with me at the after party and just have fun. So you're already started your training camp, not even know who you're fighting. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. Just starting to get ready, man. And I always did. I mean, there's a lot of times in the UFC where they wouldn't let you know who you're fighting till like 6 weeks out from your fight.
Seriously?
Yeah. Sometimes, they're like, hey, we're going to book you at this date. And so you just start training, and then it's like, oh, here's your opponent, but not very often that happen, but sometimes that would happen. You just got to know, like, it's time to start getting ready. And when they tell me, I'll just study as much as I can before.
Very, very cool. Okay. This is very cool, man. I appreciate you, buddy. I appreciate you coming on, and anything I can help you with is let me know, and I'd be more than happy to help push and promote it for you, buddy.
I appreciate it, dude. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you for helping me push all these brands, man. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, Chad Mendes, for taking time out of his busy schedule to be the guest on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. What an incredible conversation. This young entrepreneur has such a bright future, still as an athlete, but also as an entrepreneur. If you guys enjoy this podcast as much as I have, like all weeks, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. We're trying to build something special here. Leave a review. 5 stars will be absolutely amazing. Me, myself, and my team love spending time reading the reviews and checking them all out. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.